You know, Dan, you might be right. Juggling chainsaws might be the best analogy for this episode. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. We got a slow burner on this episode, which may seem a bit boring to folks. There's no action sequences at all in this episode, which for some, considering how this had been sort of roller coastering up, might be a bit of a disappointment for the old man. But for me, and this actor's heart, the person who loves plays. This is right in my wheelhouse. Episode 5 of The Old Man acts as a play with two acts, and the two acts are basically two character pieces on both halves. We have Zoe and Dan in a car for the majority of their sequence, and we have Harper and Emily slash Angela in a plane in their half of the sequence, and that's pretty much the entire episode, with a bit of a hinge point with a pretty good couple of secrets revealed that sort of links everything together. So let's start with the Harper and Angela, since that is what begins the episode. Harper knows. He knew. He sort of knew when he dropped the mom name in the last episode at the deposition, and sort of wanted to get a rise out of Emily slash Angela. And then so they get on this plane, and it's just been silent since the door closes. And Angela tries to break the silence a little bit with a joke, which a joke I've heard before, and I'm not sure where. It seems to be a joke that a lot of people use with the kid in the water, and it comes up and no hat. But it's here again. Nevertheless, there's some great acting sequence that happens in this, and they sort of are going tit for tat, and she eventually acquiesces and says, "Yeah, of course you know who I am. That doesn't change who I am. You are still my father. He is still my father." Emily does play this weird thing back and forth where it gets a little bit annoying, where I feel like she's not quite understanding that you have illegally infiltrated the FBI, and you have basically had Harper be accessory to harboring a mole in the FBI for a decade. There are a lot of wild character statements that she makes, and it's like, well, you are in the wrong. But she does hit back with a couple of good counterpoints. It's like, yeah, you did try to murder my father. You sent an assassin to go kill him before the FBI came. And I know that. But I'm okay with that. Like, I'm good with that, because you did at least try to get him out of Hamzad's way back in the day. And so they're going tit for tat, but they also don't know where they're going. That's a lot of where they're both in this tense moment. He brings up to her like, "Hey, you need to make a decision as to who you are when this plane lands. Like, you can be whomever you want in the air. I can know that you're both Emily and Angela. We can do this all day. But when we land, you got to pick a choice, and then I have to decide what choice you pick, how I respond to that." But I don't know if Harper realizes how much danger he is in this plane ride. He is very concerned with what he's done and how much he's sort of been an accessory to keeping Emily and Angela in here. But he also knows that a part of it, he is in on this. He helped Dan escape, and he helped Angela slash Emily's mom, and then escape, and thus he is sort of an accessory to whatever Hamzad is trying to do. So a lot of the reason he's trying to remove Dan off the board is so that he can kind of clear his name, so that any attachment that comes to him can sort of be gone, and he can kind of live his life freely. He does still very much seems like he cares and wants the best for Angela, but she needs to sort of acquiesce and give up certain things. He asked her straight up to be like, "Hey, if you take me to Dan and you just kind of hang out, hang back, don't worry, go away, and let us do our thing tit for tat, then we'll be good." And she just responds with a big "fuck you," and she doesn't understand how he could even fix himself to ask something like that. I can. I feel like most of the audience can, because it makes sense. But she seems to be living in this very high and mighty bubble that I don't quite understand, and maybe that's sometimes because I don't I'm not fully invested or understand Emily or Angela as a character. But I think the acting that is happening in this sequence is fantastic. It's very tense. I love it when you get two actors doing tit for tat shots by side in the small quarters. It works. What do we when they do land, they're sort of just left out there in the cold. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're at. The pilots just dip out, like, cool, we're where you're at, and just leave. And then someone comes to grab them. And it is very much now that clear that that Angela slash Emily plans to help Harper as much as she also plans to help Dan. She wants to get both of them out of whatever situation they are in. And it's sort of her trying to save her two dads, and Harper sort of acquiescing and letting that happen. Even though he knows that he feels his best way to get out of all of this is to remove Dan from the table. She is saying there might be a way if I can get both of you out of this. Let me try and do that first. That's pretty much the Harper and Emily side of it. The Dan and Zoe side of it starts off right where we left off. He's standing there and he's doing that higher over the table where she's lower, where she quote unquote has the power. But when we come back, he's like, all right, cool. He walks into the room, grabs the wire, and says, hey, cool. You know how to use passwords. I need you to go ahead and take half, and I'm going to take half, but I got to go. And it's at that moment that she realizes that she didn't really have the power in that sequence so much as he now is like, I'm giving you the money. I got to go because there's something very important happening to my daughter, and I need to go save her. And that's when she's like, oh, I am now effing up that portion of your life. Like I basically put a gun to your head and said, hey, deal with me now at your kid. Because we found out that he just found out right before he went into that dinner sequence that his daughter is getting on that plane, which we know from the last sequence, that she is getting on that plane and he has to go and save her. And so what he does in that moment is like, hey, look, I'm going to give you this money. The money's yours. But my daughter's in danger. And she's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, this is too long of a story to talk about. I can tell you on the way. Plus, I really would like you to join me on this. And she does. And so then the most of their sequence is in the car with the two of them side by side. And we get a flashback sequence, Dan and Abby back in the day. She leaves the bedroom of Hamzat and comes to meet Dan outside, and they have a conversation. And basically we learn that she's a mole. She's a spy for the Russian government to an extent. She is doing everything possible to put Hamzat in power and leave him there, but she's trying to do it in a slow and deliberate pace, because if she reveals the information that she has, and if her name is revealed, she's going to have to give it up and get tortured to do so. But if she reveals what she has, Hamzat's probably going to take that and run and go to power quickly, and it's going to corrupt her. She feels like she needs to be there to sort of buffer the way that he gets there, and sort of make that a slower transition as opposed to giving it to him all at once, because that is going to corrupt him. And Dan's like, well, you out here, I thought I was nuts. You out here juggling chainsaws. Like, what is wrong with you? And she's kind of like, yeah, I am. But the only person I know who's crazy enough to do that is you, and I think we need to do this together. And I think that is sort of what they do, and where we learn that eventually Harper got them out of that situation once things got a little muddy. But as they're driving, there's a stop that they have to make, and we lose two characters that I think a lot of us, I was sad. The scene is heartbreaking, the way it's done. But he has to drop off Carol and Dave to the hotel, which I think is going to be, it was heartbreaking to see, because, you know, as he's starting to walk away, they start barking because they're losing their master. And he does the command, and they stop somewhat, and then he gets in the car, and they pull off. He shows a receipt that has both their made-up names on there, so that in the event that he does not return, which he is very much setting this all up as if he is not, then that she can come grab them, and probably Emily. Because his whole goal is like, I'm going to go over here, and I'm probably not going to make it back, but my goal is to get you and Emily back here, so that you guys can live in and live off the money. There's a pretty good tit for tat between the two of them because there's a moment when he's like, look, you're either a mole who is pretending to be a divorcee or you're really good at finding the weakness of people and exploiting it. You did that with me, and I think that is a tool that I can use in whatever I'm about to go attempt to do. And she's like, well, I guess. And she doesn't really understand. She's like, all right, maybe I do have that. Maybe I do have that gift. And she's willing to kind of go along and help. But before they do, after they drop off the dogs, there's a stop that they have to go back to the banker that we saw in the last episode that wasn't really paying Dan any attention. He's kind of blowing him off. He's like, oh, yeah, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. Dan's like, no, now that this has happened, we got to speed this process up, and he has to go ahead and give us these funds and move things around. He's ready to go in there and wreck shop. He's like, yo, I'm going to go in here and handle business. And so he's like, hold on. You just said I have a particular set of skills. If you go back in there, the only thing you're going to do is try to beat him up and try to force him into this. Clearly, that might not be the way to do this. So maybe let me go in there and handle it my way. And he's like, look, you're either going to get the door slammed in your face, or it's just not going to, it's going to get ugly, and I'm going to have to go in there anyway. She does, and originally she does get the door slammed in his face, but she says something and uses her particular set of skills to get out of it, and the situation is sort of rectified, and they are now sort of this team. But he warns her, like, hey, where we're going, what you just did won't work. You can't just get out of the car and go do willy-nilly thinking you have this skill that I told you about. Because those people out there are ruthless. And all the weak people that you would be able to kind of get the one up on, they're dead. So you're going to be going against people who are smarter and more vicious than you. And that's where I come in. And she's like, well, look, if you're there for me, I don't have to worry about that part. I think together we can get through this. And so they get on the plane. She dolls herself up a little bit, dresses unlike Zoe and more like her alter ego, puts on the rings, and they seem like two rich people getting on a plane, getting ready to go and wreck shop. We have a bridge sequence, though, that happens in a cafe. Morgan, who, first time that we're kind of really seeing on screen, we've heard the name before. He calls Watson at the FBI and kind of is like, hey, I'm putting together a team. I need to put together a team to go find Harper because he's now lost. How he's gotten this information so quick should be sort of a red flag for everybody. Like, how do you know Harper's not on the radar anymore? How do you know he's lost? But he gets off the phone and is like, I'll be in contact with you. I'll let you know what's going on. Julian walks in, and Julian looks pretty banged up, worse for wear. But Harper got the number for Julian from Morgan. And Julian feels a little like, yo, what didn't you know? Because I'm having a hard time understanding how I was already ambushed. So I'm not sure if you're here to apologize for being inept at your job and sending me into a warfare and not knowing it, or that you set me up. And Momentum's like, no, I knew that I had a mole at the FBI. I put her there. He said it's so matter of fact. He's like, no, I'm responsible for that. Like, I put Emily there. And what we find out is that he is sort of, we got my two dads, my two sons happening all throughout the show. He is sort of a father figure, surrogate, to both Dan and Harper. So Harper and Dan are more like brothers than they are of whatever these adversarial setup that we've been led to believe. That Morgan treats the two of them as sons. But now, because Hamzat's coming, he's like, I gotta wipe everybody off the board. Everyone needs to be gone because this is starting to all blow back. But he put Emily in place to be with Harper and is well aware of that. And so he knew that Emily would give the heads up. And Julian's kind of like, well, I don't really know how to take that. But it all ends well, and Morgan and Julian are now absconding upon the same location that Harper and Emily are, and where Zoe and Dan are going. And there's going to be this triangle of deceit and conceit and double crossing and cross and twists that are happening, that I think these last two episodes of The Old Man are about to be fire. Like, I know that this episode was really, for some people, was really slow moving and didn't really have the action, but I am fascinated to see these slow down a little bit, pull back a little bit, put the brakes on and take these character moments and sort of establish these characters before we just go for broke in these next two episodes, to kind of put a little bit more weight behind everybody's relationships before we start breaking them all down. I do think it is going to be very interesting to see Dan in his element fighting without Carol and Dave. I think to not have the dogs who have been sort of a staple to the series, but also the people that kind of gotten Dan out of a lot of curious positions, no longer there. He's going to be a little bit weakened going into this. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that all works out. Emily's going to have to make a choice. It seems like unless Dan and Harper get on the same page, Emily's going to have to make a choice between the two of them. She wants to save them both, but they seem to be at odds. And I don't know if when they get face to face, if that changes. Who knows if Morgan's going to take them both out? There's a lot of this person works with this person, but this person doesn't F with this person. Things that are happening that is going to make these last two episodes very tense, and I am excited and can't wait till we get to see what happens next in episode 6 and then the finale of episode 7. And I'm glad that we have a season 2. That means they don't have to rush everything and tell me all the story at once. So, what did you guys think about episode 5? Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Was this a little too slow for you, or do you like the character building moments to kind of bring us to a boiling point so that when we get to these next two episodes, we can just go? If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that is on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.